All right, once again, this is the 2021 Acrylic RedBone. As I spoke before, you're going to have a lot of available options as far as being able to go from double reed setting to single reed setting. But one thing I need to bring out is we talked about the two hash marks on the side. Okay, your double reed setting, the way it's going to come is the way they think it's set to their liking. But you have maybe that's not what you would prefer. Maybe you would prefer a little different. Okay. So once again, the double reed setting, the wedge is going to be in line with the lowest hash mark, or the one closest to the insert. Okay. Oh, if you notice, there's also a high hash mark, and there's a space in between the two. The single reed setting is the high hash mark. The double reed setting is the low hash mark. Okay. You have the ability to float that wedge between those two hash marks and maybe get a little different sound, maybe something that's better suited to your hunting situation, you know, to your liking, to whatever works in your particular blind. All that's different. All that's a lot of different variables. Okay, whatever acoustical environment you're in, or whatever you found over the years, gets a better response from the geese. Once again, that's highly individualized. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to get that screwdriver or some kind of object like a screwdriver. You're going to stick it in the insert, find the bottom of that wedge, the flat part, pop it a little bit on, you know, hit it on a hard surface, and you're going to feel it break free. Okay. All right. Once again, the reeds set down flush against the reed stops on the tone board. That gives you the ability to float this wedge, okay, in between those two marks on the side, the high one and the low one. Let's put it right in the middle of the two and try it that way. Okay, so once again, I have it in the almost exactly between the low hash mark and the high hash mark. I'm gonna push it till it's tight. When I mean push, I push it on the tone board and the wedge just till you feel it snug in there. Okay, for me personally, that's too tight, but in somebody else's situation, that kind of sound may work really well. Once again, the ability to float that wedge up and down in between those two marks is a big deal. Okay, that gives you the ability to tune that call more individualized to not only yourself but to your hunting situation. Okay. So maybe you do that and you say, nah, I don't like that. Let's put it back to the way it came. Well, get your screwdriver again. Pop that wedge out. Or maybe this time let's go just above that that bottom hash mark. Instead of halfway in between the two marks, maybe just above it. Okay? And once again, I'm gonna tap on that wedge, but I'm not gonna try to break it or anything. It's not that forceful, just enough. You tap it and look at it. Okay. All right, I can see I'm just above the bottom hash mark. So let's see what that does. Okay, that's more in line, closer to what I like to run. Okay, so we started halfway in between the two. We thought that was a little tight, so we took the difference between halfway in between and the bottom, and we went there. Okay, you got to remember something with these calls. The tolerances are very close in these calls, so movement, just the width of that hash mark is going to make a substantial difference. Okay, so let's put it back on the factory setting. We know it ran halfway in between, and we know it ran a little bit above that hash mark. Now I'm going to float that wedge again. All right, so now once again the top of the wedge is even with the low hash mark for double read. Okay, okay, so that was double read. You're going to have the same ability to do it single read, okay, but with single read you're going to be coming down with the wedge instead of going from the bottom up. Okay, once again you still have that range in between the two hash marks, but factory setting on the double is going to be at the bottom mark, so you float the wedge up to stay somewhere in between the top hash mark and the low hash mark. Single, you're going to start at the top hash mark and you're going to push the wedge down to be somewhere in between the top hash mark and the low hash mark. Both ways, single and double, we're staying between those two hash marks. Take my top read off. All right. Well, that's going to happen too. You know, got to get used to fooling with these. Okay, so now it's set almost even with the top hash mark. Okay, I'm going to knock it down a hair. All right. So we're just a hair beneath that top hash mark. To me, that's good. Okay, to me, the factory settings on these calls, the way they come, and the way the instruction is as far as the single read setting on the top hash mark and double read on the low is very good. But for somebody else, somebody's different physiology, the way they blow, the way their hand position is, whatever, the way they back pressure the call, they may feel differently. And you have the ability, the flexibility to change that. So I'm going to knock it down a hair more. Okay. Now this, in my experience, this is going to be too low for me. But maybe it's not too low for somebody else. I don't know. Okay, maybe I was wrong because that sounds pretty good to me. So once again, you're going to have to experiment and find what works best for you. There's a lot of options in this thing. So play with it and find your best spot. Find your spot.